Most people are creative like that.
But just think the costume.
Was there
I can't imagine I was up
There
in
is
front.
a-
Middle 60s guy putting on the tights.
I hope he got the one with like the plastic muscles.
It's something everyone will remember for the rest of their life. And not just the kids.
That was probably more rules in the video.
I can't imagine what might happen this year. I'll be waiting.
Well, now he's committed to proving this character.
We expect Iron Man or something this year now. Like, come on.
Maybe Santa, I don't know.
No, that's changing.
Did you? When? So that
You get,
No.
Rita.
Just making sure this hasn't turned past since 12:30, so it's to 8, so.
She blocked you.
That'd be funny. Just as a block.
To my email, let me check that.
Officially excommunicado.
Oh.
Probably 10 seconds. The one before.
Yeah, I was actually just
It's
going
like
to
one
ask.
that's like 40 minutes. Alright, you guys. You know, hit that gavel.
Okay, everybody ready? You like that, Dr. King?
I love that.
Okay, so welcome to December 12th special board meeting for Geauga Public Health. Call the meeting in order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So the first thing under the new business tonight is operations planning. So, Lynn, do you want to start?
Sure.
Make some comments about that?
I would like to know when we are going to be allowed or be able to have the public discussion on options for filling the administrator position.
And director.
Huh?
And director.
Well, I'm more interested in talking about the options for the administrator. Because if there's not an administrator, then the rest of it just falls in behind. So I don't know if we can have that discussion today or not.
It is number 2 or letter B on that same thing. You discussed it there. Just planning wise, I mean, just a couple notes. I know I had mentioned this before, but with the transition, O&M will be in its infancy, so we need to plan on that. Because really, it should start right around 1/1. It's probably really going to start like the middle of January because of Christmas and everything. But O&M, I'd like to see that not dropped as much as possible, so because it's taken years to get it in place, and to make sure the state's not coming and trying to, do any of their options they give us. The fees and everything ready to go, but obviously hiring staff, getting staff assigned to do those things, that's going to be a full-time job itself. And you're going to have to retrain the clerks to do all the O&M stuff versus the FSOP. O&M being operation maintenance, FSOP being for sale property. Quickly upon us, we had the Health District Advisory Council, or the HDAC, as many of you know it.
Adam, just
Yes.
to pause 1 second on the O&M. So can you remind us what phase of O&M will be implemented in January?
Yeah, the NPDS
Okay.
systems.
And that's the only part that's.
Correct.
Okay.
And those are relatively, I call them low-hanging fruit. There's about 2,000 of them. It's a little less than 2,000, I think.
Yeah,
And they're already get yearly inspections anyways, so it kind of just rolls into that.
okay.
And it gets the ball rolling for us for O&M, because I think some of you guys remember, or some of you ladies remember, there was discussion like what happens if we decide not to do O&M, so we just say, hey, we're not gonna do it. And that's what the state said. In essence, they would take the entire each division and ship it out to somebody else. I don't know how they do that, but that was their explanation to us, was they just, if you're gonna avoid the law, it's shipped out entirely. That, I'm sure it's a huge process. It's not like you just turn a switch on overnight, but that was one of the discussions we had with the state. It's a big thing. I don't know how they do that. I mean, it wasn't like here's a roadmap. It was just I believe two of the board members were on that call, and that was kind of the discussion there. That's what happens. Because there was, I believe, at one of our meetings, I was asked, what if we just don't do it? And that's when I then started the conversation with the state, is what if we just don't do it?
Yeah.
And because it's been in the ORC since like the 70s, I want to say, mid-70s, and it's just not been enforced until 2015 when they said, hey, you have to do this. There's no more kind of playing around. And they wanted to see, I think it's at a minimum an implementation of some sort by 2025, if I remember correctly. That was the date, or 2024, just one of the two.
I also think it's important that we started going with that O&M program. We probably need to continue it. I guess I'm just saying that because that was part of the reason why we got rid of for sale of property, but we still wanna have something similar, something in place so that we can still show the state that we're, you know, that we're aware of septic systems and we're doing something to make sure we don't have raw sewage going into Lake Erie or whatever, to the lakes.
The Health District Advisory Council is quickly coming up. For that, we need a budget prep for 2024, because that's what we'll be talking about with them. We probably should discuss O&M with the HDAC as to where it stands. I still am planning to give the presentation at the Townships Association meeting on January 11th. I asked to have an 8-minute slot there. That's just what they give. So I have an 8-minute slot there to talk about talk about the O&M program. The levy needs to be reviewed by everybody. It's probably more of a general meeting issue, but it is planning for the operation planning on this thing. Prepare the presentation for HDAC in general. Usually we go over what we did, what the successes were, what changes happened, just so they're aware of what's going on. And then just prepare in general for the meeting, because some of those things, like we usually, even though we don't host it, it's usually at our location. So we need to make sure that the rooms are checked out. If Mr. Tiber can't do that, you know, if we have like, you know, we usually get like cookies or something like that, or some light sandwiches, things of that nature. The finances, so preparing the 2024 budget for obviously the Budget Commission, but also for the HDAC. The Budget Commission meeting in general, you have to prepare for that, to have a presentation ready for them. Obviously, I'll give you guys my presentation. I created them over the years.
When is that, do you know?
Usually in May, somewhere in there.
Okay.
HDAC's like in March-ish, and then usually budget's in May. The 2021 and 2022 audit, that'll be coming up relatively soon in 2023 at some point. They'll start that process. I'm getting ready for it. The levy in general, again, I'm being duplicative on some things. The levy in general needs to be looked at, because obviously our levy expires relatively soon at the end of next year. So we plan on, usually want to have a year in advance, which would be asking for that in May of this coming year. If it's not May, it'd be November. Those are the two main ballot times, so you're gonna get in there at a reasonable time and not more cost intensive to the public. Because obviously we pay to put something on the levy, or sorry, out to the public for voting. So if we do that at an odd time, we pay the full share versus a portion of it. The finances in terms of who will handle a lot of things that I normally do, so I've been doing those for about 6 years now. I just kept doing them as administrator. You guys will figure out who you want to take on that stuff. So prepping different grant spreadsheets, the budget in general, budget commission meetings, things like that. Just figure out how you guys want to handle that.
How was that done before?
There used to be somebody here that handled it,
Can you-
but it's before my time.
Okay.
For the past 6 years, I've just handled it. 5 years, 6 years, whatever it comes out to. around.
It was an internal person.
Mhm.
Okay, it wasn't contracted out
No.
from someone else in the county.
No, because it's, if I had to guess, I'm not sure who, you can contract out to somebody, but it can't really be the budget commission because they have to oversee it, so they can't
Right.
create it and oversee it.
Maybe we see when like Portage or Trumbull or someone or some of those counties have as a position for that.
It's probably close to fiscal coordinates. Usually you have like a fiscal clerk and you have a director of finances. We have a fiscal clerk, we don't have like a director who would do that stuff. But that's not a position we've had. I don't budget for that either. If you want me to, I can budget for it, but right now we don't have that.
Right.
I think we should be budgeting for a finance director.
Okay.
Whether we fill or not, it's a different story.
Services.
You're
Yeah.
But-
probably talking, well, I guess that'd be a question you guys can discuss about personal compensation, because I'm not sure how you want to, you know, do you want to structure it like the rest of the directors, do you want to have it less than the directors, or however you want to have it, so, something to talk about. Grants, just tracking and creating the spreadsheets. Carol does one of her grants, but I'm not, you know, if we would like to get more grants, you can't keep tacking it onto one person. So somebody have to be knowledgeable about Excel, because really that's what you use to budget for everything, so you have to be pretty knowledgeable with Excel. And then the knowledge of the grants in general, you know, or the rules, regulations, bidding, things like that. So we don't really have a grant writer here, so you have to look at a grant. And that's something that I know some other counties like sub it out to somebody, or they find somebody in the county that can help them. It just depends on what they have. I mean, you really never know. Those are some of the big items, I guess, that I had on my list. Is just, you know, those are the glass balls that if they're in the air and they fall, they're probably going to shatter. Whereas some of the other ones, you know, they probably will bounce back up to grab it and just keep juggling. So
What
those are
about
some
the
ones.
accreditation?
Accreditation, sorry, yeah, that, I know I mentioned it last meeting. That's one that's probably the biggest worry I have right now. We're trying to figure out how to handle that. So usually you have an accreditation coordinator. That person's usually full-time on average. Now they might do other things, but they're full-time. That's probably $50,000 a year position. Added benefits, you're probably at $70,000 to $80,000, depending if they take family or not family, because family alone is like $17,000, $18,000 for health insurance, health insurance. And then the accreditation fees, those are already built into our budget, but you're gonna need somebody to do that. Right now, I'm using Sarah Sullivan and Magali Rios right now to help me with those, but it's not something they can do the whole thing. They're all within CHIP and the SHA, the Community Health Improvement Plan and the Community Health Assessment. But when it comes to accreditation itself, there's hundreds of documents to upload and create to make sure they're updated. It's a huge chunk of time.
Have we reached out to the accreditation folks to let them know our current position?
We haven't, just because we don't have to submit anything yet, so we're still in our like in-between time. But we're gonna, I mean, we will in the near future probably, depending on where we're at flux-wise. You can get extensions. They don't seem like they're super stingent on like, you can't have an extension. But it'd be, again, my only concern, like I mentioned before, all of you, is the budget side of it. You know, Tom Quaid did that before. So you guys hired a health commissioner, got an accreditation coordinator as well. You know, I was doing administration plus the finance side. So as we start to like say, okay, one person does their one thing, you're expanding positions, and you know, the levy's 25 years old. And we do have a hefty carryover balance, partially with COVID, because we maximized how we spent things. But I'm always nervous when you start spending based on reserves. You know, it's kind of using your checking account and your savings account together, and it's how much money you have. Well, you do until your savings gets drawn down, and then you only have your checking left, which is your general income coming in. And you just start to overspend, and then you just keep overspending as you continue.
Explain to me what you mean by the levy is 25 years old.
The levy is still the same value as it was 25 years ago, so it's not been increased. And my understanding, talking to Chuck Walder at the county auditor's office, is if we go for a new levy increased, the levy we have now is a certified levy, so it's homestead rollback dollars. Let's say it's a 1 mil levy, I'm just running a number. You probably have to look at 1.2 mil levy to account for the same dollars. And if you want more than that, you gotta go above that. And I'm just using random numbers. Those mils meant nothing, but I'm just using an example. So that's gonna impact us as well, as you might have to go to the community for significantly more than what you have now, because it's gonna flux out to be just a small amount more. And with the economy where it's heading, I personally would not want to be voting for a levy right now. Just my personal opinion. I mean, that's gonna be, I think, a tough sell with where, you know, 8% inflation, things are not looking good on the horizon. Obviously, we hope for the best, but I think that's gonna be a tough one.
What's the advantage of accreditation, in your opinion?
So accreditation, without it, my understanding is that you cannot do your core service. So like environmental health, you can't have that.
But we gave those services before we were accredited, correct?
So accreditation, that's relatively new for the standards and everything.
Okay.
I think Lake was like the 14th accredited, and that was like in 2014, 2015. It's relatively new in the grand scheme of things.
Okay.
So, just, how long is accreditation good for? 2, 3, 5 years? I cannot remember.
I wanted to say 5. I want to say 5.
I think it's
5 off the top.
So, what I'm hearing you say is if we're not reaccredited, we cannot really manage our EH programs anymore.
There's a lot of stuff in-house we can no longer do, theoretically, if the state upheld that side. We also would not get our state subsidy, which is money they kind of kick back to us to offset some things. We would not get that either, is my understanding. So,
How much is that, you know?
I want to say 50-some thousand off the top of my head.
And accreditation, we were at the tail end of accreditation, weren't we? As a standard, we had just not done the work. And
Yeah,
Tom
we've
Quaid
been-
took us there. Tom was before me, he was working on it when I came,
Yeah,
so,
we had someone working on it, we just never got to that point, and Tom had a lot of experience with accreditation. He was pretty much the sole person. I mean, the staff did the work too, but he kind of knew how to get there, what to submit, how to submit it, the wording, he kind of did all that.
He had accredited previous department.
Two different departments. And he's also on the accreditation board.
but your choice of not being accredited is not really an option any longer.
Yeah, I would say it's not. I mean,
What is it coming to?
We've only been accredited for a year and a half.
Year
yeah, year and a half. It's
We have time, but we still
The
need
But you have to-
continual.
it's
Yeah.
true continuing education, continuing
Right.
improvement.
Yeah.
You have to keep, I mean, if you wait till the fifth year, yeah, we're gonna have a hard.
You know, it's a lot like,
No, I understand. So there are accrediting standards that we have to meet on a monthly or quarterly basis.
It's really kind of whenever you get reaccredited, that's when they check them, but you
Right.
should be continuing them to
Correct.
show like we've done this every
Go
time.
along.
Yeah,
just like hospital accreditation.
Like everything.
yeah.
If you're not, hospital, you're not accredited, they can't get reimbursed for Medicare and Medicaid.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be, the EH is the hardest part. I mean, it's, if they said, hey, you didn't get your state subsidy, we could say, okay, we're gonna thumb our nose at you and we're
Well,
gonna
that's
lose,
what-
you know.
Yeah, because it sounds like you're paying for somebody to do your accreditation, and then you get a little bit of money back, but
Correct.
you're not.
It does not flux out.
It sounds like a lot of red tape, from what I can
You know,
understand, but you
100%.
don't really get a lot, and- but you still have.
From a finance perspective,
Yeah,
from a finance perspective, it's a bad deal.
Joint commission's the same.
yeah.
And the other thing is, if I look at accreditation, and I said like, I can physically see where we're getting better by doing it, I would say, okay. You know, I mean, I talk to the finance directors, I'm not seeing, we're dollar and cents people. We're looking at, you know, does my ROI track? That's all, I think it's a hard thing to track, besides that you can't do your EH services. I mean, that's where they get you with. So, I mean, those are just some things like, you know, as you guys plan on moving forward, you know, you're gonna need to keep those in mind. And then, you know, realistically speaking, with the wage ranges we put, and assuming someone takes family benefits, it's probably about $80,000 increase to the budget, hiring the 2 positions as well. So these are all things that kind of like, the tolerance is stack until they don't stack, so just be mindful of where those are stacking at.
So I'm very concerned.
Yeah, it's.
I'm very concerned because, in the brief review I've done with the applicants for the positions that have applied so far, there doesn't appear anyone who has any experience doing any of this stuff applying.
And I'll be honest, I have not, other than a topic we'll discuss later, I mean, I don't look at the applicants, I'll let that to whoever's in charge of that area of hiring. But it's all stuff you guys can overcome. I mean, don't think for a minute like it's just doom and gloom. It's just, I'm a conservative at heart, so I'm looking at, you know, conservatively, what would I be worried about if I were you? And I don't want to leave here and have somebody go, you know, you could have told us A, B, and C were coming up, and instead you focused on the fluffy-go-lucky stuff that made you look good.
My concern is that it seems that, if I can speak generally about the pool that I've reviewed so far, that the applicants are making the same mistake that I made about understanding what the Geauga Health District actually does.
Are we going into topic B right now?
I mean,
I was morphing
Yeah.
there, yes, because I think
Okay.
we have to have an understanding of topic B before we really get a better understanding.
and I think we can kind of float back and forth as long as we stick to those 2 topics. That's really the special meeting
Yes.
thing.
And
So my concern is that the mistake that I thought I made coming out to the board was that I had the understanding that the Geauga Health District actually was responsible in some way for the delivery of personal health.
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, 75–80% of the work that we do is really environmental health.
Correct.
And wells and septics
Mhm.
and groundwater and contamination and food service safety and the like, of which not one applicant shows to date any knowledge, training, or experience in the areas of greatest need, and virtually everything that you put in your list of things that the new director or or environmental health administrator would need to do, none of the applicants would have experience doing any of that.
Yeah, and it's tough, because it's, I mean, when you hear health district, you think personal health. I mean, that's, I think anyone would think that, right? I think that's what it is. You think nurses and dietitians and diabetes and cancer. And the reality, as you said, is 85, 90% of what we do is actually septics, wells, nuisance complaints. That's the majority of it.
Right.
And it has a lot to do with the fact that we are a rural county.
And a
Right.
It would
relatively
be-
healthy
It
county.
would be different if we were in Cover County,
Right.
okay?
Agreed.
And to Dr. Ruth's comment, I have reviewed the applicants, and I would say that in general, I could make a case for looking at 3 of them, but there is no, at this point, there is not a really strong candidate that jumps out.
Right. I can make a case for looking at one of them.
For which position?
Probably administrative, that's the ones
I don't see anyone who is qualified to run environmental health.
There's not, and I'm
Right.
assuming that as an administrator, that there will be a quick learning curve. So I want a person that would be strong suit, and I see 1, I'll give the benefit to 3 for the purpose of discussions.
Right.
But nothing perfect by any stretch.
Yeah, I mean, I
Right.
think there's people worth interviewing in the pool. But I agree that some of the qualifications are
So
whack.
that concerns me greatly.
Yeah.
Because if the strategy is that we're gonna hire as our preferred option, hire a replacement for our current leadership, that's not, to my knowledge, at this moment, going well.
Well, that's where I would like to, I see we have 4 options, and this is not unlike when, Mr. Quaid, we had 4 options then, and we have 4 options now. One of them is to keep our current model, a full-time administrator, part-time, okay? Option 2 is really,
Is that, you're saying as in employees or contracted from Lake? Because those are different options.
I'm saying keep the current model. I'm not talking about any contracting right now.
But that's not our current model.
Our current models, we have-
Contracting.
We
Right.
have, okay, contracted, we have a administrator, and we have a health commissioner.
Okay.
All right. The other option is to seek the full-time health commissioner and eliminate the administrator position, go that avenue. A third one is to contract temporarily with Lake County for some or all the services until such time a full-time administrator, part-time health commissioner model is filled, and that has to have a deadline on it, because that can't go on forever, okay? And obviously, the 4th is to, as I see it, just my view, is to move all the GPH functions, come up with an agreement and move them all into Lake. I don't see any other options. If we do not have good candidates in a timely manner, I think our options become they narrow down. Because reality is that Adam walks out of here on the 31st. If we do not have January, if we do not have a body that is capable of at least walking into that job, we have to come up with another option. And it may be, option 3, temporarily we keep it until we find somebody. But at some point, we have to put a line on it. And I don't know what that date is, but we do have to put a line on it, because I'm sure Lake is not gonna wanna continue to do temporary work for a period of time. That's a discussion we would have to enter into with Lake, okay? But
Of the 2 services, environmental health and everything else, it seems to me that environmental health, in the limited time I've been here, has the lion's share of the need, services, and revenue for the health district.
Mm-hmm.
agreed.
And it is also the hardest piece to fill with a person who, as you say, could walk in on February 1st and take over.
Yeah, and I think like you guys have all seen, I know personally, I've seen a lot of counties don't have septics, or very many septics, and there's always septics, but there's very few. That's probably the oddest thing about Geauga. I mean, take the Amish out of the picture, the septics is really that's a tough thing to learn and understand, especially if you've never lived on septic. I've had septic my whole life almost. I'm used to it, but most people, don't know what septic is.
So in my mind, I think that we need to have serious discussion about the possibility of being short-term and long-term, looking for, or looking what the model would look like if Lake took over environmental health.
And just to be clear, that's something I can't talk about, it's
Right.
on both sides.
I understand.
And I can't,
So I'm
I
just
couldn't tell you.
stating it as my view of the world,
Mhm.
as I see it from my perspective, because I think in order for us to meet Adam's to-do list of what we need to accomplish, we need someone who can perform those duties and tasks. And of the options that you outlined, Lake is the only option that could come in and administer those services with a turnkey switch.
I think that the turnkey switch is really the key point that concerns me the most, and a positive to, you know, the aspect of Lake, but the concern with filling these positions. We may get 2 candidates that we say, okay, yeah, they're great, but they can't start until January 31st. Adam's still gone, so who's training these people? Who onboards them? Who, you know, gets them into this is all of the stuff you're going to have to accomplish?
Well, and how are we even paying for them? Because when I'm looking at these salaries plus benefits, that is not fitting into this budget we have.
We'd have to figure out where, I mean, we can cut things out of the budget, it's what do we cut and where,
Yeah.
because that's, you know, I created 2023's budget based on kind of what we have now, and assuming the levy's still levy until the end of 2023. If the levy increases, that's one thing. Now, as a taxpayer, I'd be hard pressed to vote for levy when you have $4 million sitting,
Right.
3.5 million sitting in an account.
Right.
Nothing against us, I just, that's a hard,
To the naked eye.
yeah,
you
that's
see
a
that.
hard sell.
Yeah.
and I think I have a hard sell to the budget commission selling that. Not saying it's impossible, but I would, you know, given board mental health and some other ones, what they had to do, I'd be somewhat nervous going into that conversation.
I'd be interested in seeing a list of services that we need to provide according to the ORC and the list of services we may provide. So the ORC will say, sometimes say the Board of Health shall do this.
Yes.
And sometimes we'll say the Board of Health may. For example, we may create a fetal death panel, that's something like that, to
Yeah.
investigate
Fatality
babies
review
who
board.
die. Okay, so we didn't do that, right? That's
We
in
do,
May.
we are on the fatality review board, we are on that.
Oh, we are, I
Yes.
didn't, okay, so, but there's, you know, there's the may do
Yes.
this, and there's the shall, and I would be
Yeah.
interested in seeing what is in the shall column.
There's pretty much.
What are the things we absolutely have to do, and I'm not saying we should nix everything in
Yeah.
the may, but I would just
It's
like to
usually
see
like,
what that is.
and I'm speaking off the cuff here, but there's communicable disease, there's housing, I believe if I remember correctly, tuberculosis is a communicable disease. There's a couple of it's not a lot though. I mean, the
Right,
shall,
it's like the
the
vaccinations
wills.
is a may, right, that's, or,
Correct.
that's a may.
Correct.
And there's other things like that that we provide that are mays.
Mhm. And I always remember the list. At least I remember putting the list is back when Lake had their finance issue. That's what our board went to was what do we have to and what do
Right.
we do? And it said
Right.
let's line up what does and doesn't fit. And so we adjusted our budget based on what we have to and do not have to do. But yeah, I mean, I can get you that list. I'd have to. I just don't. I mean, I'm paraphrasing when I say that was off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I can get you the whole list. It's not a whole lot of things though. Grand scheme of things.
That we have to.
Correct, you
services
have to,
we have to
required.
provide. I think that's interesting.
Could you have that list prepared for the next meeting?
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, with that in
I've got a copy
mind,
of it somewhere.
just from general perspective, are we providing a plethora of services beyond the shall at this time?
It honestly depends. Some are grant funded, which if it's grant funded, it's a wash. You wouldn't have the grant, you wouldn't have the person. There's some other things that we don't have to provide that we do. The immunizations are a tough one because the Amish tend to go to us, and Carol talked to that, because that's a good source for them, is to come to us. Now, it's not like 99% of them are coming to us, but we do get them coming to us. So those are actually what Carol and I talked about was like our GBO grant, the Geauga Ohio grant was. It's usually a money loser, but if we don't do it, the Amish don't go for anywhere for their vaccines.
Yeah.
which then that's a tough situation to put them in. And if we increase the cost, which we looked at, to have a new, which we need some software to do, it makes the cost, you know what the numbers were? Carol,
For
sorry.
what, for the software?
Yeah, it was, we had to raise the vaccines to meet what they require.
Right now, we charge $5 a child Amish to come in to be immunized. Most counties, and they can come in for 4 shots and it's still $5, that's it. But most counties charge $35 per shot. The software we looked at was eClinical to bring on because we do not have an EMR here, an electronic medical record here. We don't have that. We looked at that. There's the cost of that. The Amish won't go anywhere else because of the cost. If you go on like this EMR, it is part of a like co-op. You have to use their prices. You'll go to like $36 a shot. That's gonna move all the Amish out. Right now, probably 95-97% of the immunizations we give are Amish. We do get others in, but it's mostly Amish population.
Is there pressure to go with an EMR?
No, there isn't. It's just for internal tracking, because like HDIS, there isn't a lot that we can do right now as far as verifying insurance, because our GBO grant is set up to where we can only administer to those underinsured or that do not have insurance. We have no way of verifying that.
We're kind of operating as 1995.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
I mean,
I
an
2022.
understand that,
EMR, an
but-
EMR would be super,
EMR
but
would be great to
But
talk
I
about the
don't
other systems, but
see
I don't
many-
think we can deter those patients. That's their access to getting vaccines. I would hate to see it go from $5 per visit to that much, but.
Like we
It's
just
not a
had a
necessity.
clinic the beginning
Yeah.
of the month and it was full. We have another clinic this Wednesday, it's full. It's probably.
I don't see the Amish
exception
community
to-
clamoring for us to get an electronic record.
No, it's more for internal, so if we make our lives easier in terms of like, how to process it, how to track it, that's the tough thing, because right now it's hand counting things, it's hand counting vials, hand counting how many go out,
Yeah.
which is not impossible, but it's, if you're paying a staff member to go in and go like 1, 2, 3 versus, oh yeah, we checked that barcode, that one's out, check that barcode, that one's out. How do you bill? You gotta call in and do it. It's just efficiency models. It's not perfect, but it's something we've looked at, and then we're talking about HGIS, which we use now, which is Health District Information System. That may be going away, we have that discussion. If we don't have access to that, we have nothing to track vaccines with.
So right now, I'm frantically looking at ImpactSys, the state database,
Yeah.
to see how we can modify that, to be able to pull at least the information. We did run a list of what we considered owned patients. We did run that in-house. Becky and I, we've been looking at that to see if we at least have that, and then we know how we can go and Impact to pull their current records. So it was kind of a last-ditch effort to see if HDIS goes away, how am I gonna be able to do this?
And I don't wanna get too far away from the operation and planning topic tonight. That's kind of, when we go planning though, those are the things we're also looking at, is what impact that's gonna have in 6 months, I mean,
Yeah.
12 months.
And so the reason I'm bringing this up is that even if we went with an option that had Lake taking over environmental health services for a period of time, the sticky widget as I see it there is that since we also have an obligation to maintain the personal health services that we are doing through the Department of Nursing, if all the income that is generated by environmental health is tied up in a contract with Lake, that would
That's how
put us into.
you would have to
You'd have to.
We would have
structure
to,
the agreement.
we would have to
Yeah.
structure it in such a way that we retain revenue from the clients and
absolutely.
services that we provide, even though we are asking Lake to perform.
And it's pretty true levy dollars right now. I mean, cause EH can only fund EH, there's cost methods that we have, or models we have in place, so like if a service costs $10, we should not charge more than $10. My understanding is if it's within 10%, I'm fine with that. If you
Okay.
get to 20%,
So
like,
EH can only fund EH.
correct, so nursing is mostly your levy dollars, is where that's coming from.
I see.
And grants.
And grants, yeah, we have GVO, and then the workforce development, which either is gonna be extended in July or it ends in July, we're not sure. And Narcan, that one's up in the air right now, that may not exist any longer, so. And GVO is
Safe
like,
communities, we have
Safe
safe
communities, yeah.
communities, and we have the FEP grant.
and GVO is only what, like 20,
It's 30.
30,000.
30,000.
It's come down from like, I think 50 when I started, down to about like 25 or 30 now, sorry, 30 now. So those are things you have to take into account when you do that, and then we share some people between the divisions to, you know, kind of make sure that the costs match out. So there is some of that too. But it is difficult. I mean, it's unfortunately the state has continued to kind of erode the funding that the nursing side has. And EH doesn't have to worry about that because EH is mostly revenue driven by fees and permits and licenses. So EH kind of generates its own revenue. Now the sticky wicket with EH is my goal is always the most efficient model possible. Just because I can charge $100 doesn't mean I should charge $100. If we can do the service and provide a good service to the community for 50, charge 50 and do that service. Don't go crazy above and beyond to just get pain in the butt to everybody. So we generally try to follow that model when we do stuff. But you know, it's the inflation, everything has wreaked havoc on health departments. I mean, I'm sure cities and towns, it's wrecked on everybody, but we don't have these models in place to garner an extra 5% or 6% to offset what we need to. It's just not, the system's not designed that way. So, yeah.
So, I guess, so back to this operations thing, I think, the different choices we have, probably what we have to do is be, conscious of what our budget is to make sure we stay within our budget, and then also, if we were to contract everything out, it might be, best to contract everything out or only a portion of it. But keep in mind, if we just contracted out environmental health, that is the one that is bringing revenue in, so I don't know, if that's the right solution. And I'm not saying that it's the right solution to contract everything out, but I think we've had experience that if we do contract things out, we usually recognize the cost savings. So.
Yes, there was a cost savings with Adam and
Right.
Dan Lark.
And then again, like you said, according to the applicants we have, if they're not real impressive, then, we certainly don't wanna blow our budget up to hire somebody that may or not be any
Exactly.
good either.
Yeah.
Yeah, the applicants are available till December 22nd?
They'll stay open until we close them. I mean, I just, Bamboo HR doesn't shut it off at 10 days. I leave it running until you guys tell me to turn it off.
Okay.
Just
Well-
because I've kept hands length away, so there's no like, oh, Adam did this or Adam did that.
Right. So most of the applicants, so just to summarize, there's 3 EH and there's 11 administrator ones right now. And when I checked, about 1 o'clock today, there was, just one more applicant. So I don't know if we're gonna, how many more applicants we're gonna see, but I would leave, my recommendation is we leave it open for at least, through part of at least next week and see what comes in.
I actually didn't see, on my view, any of the EH applicants. I didn't see any.
Yeah, I think I only did EH for Lynn and Carolyn Brakey because those were 2 on the hiring team.
I see.
So I not open
Rich
it
is
to
on,
everybody.
it's Rich and me.
No, because
Isn't
Rich really shouldn't be EH.
It's best if I'm not on there.
I'm an administrator, but I saw,
But then who's on EH with me?
Lynn, it's you
No.
and Lynn.
no,
No.
no,
Oh, sorry, I thought it was
no,
you.
Ashley and I,
Lynn and I were at the,
Administration.
we need,
should
actually,
have it
Carolyn
all
and-
spelled out.
we actually need
Mark,
Mark.
put Carolyn and Mark on
I thought that was what.
EH, so then you'll have access. But the question I have, okay, for administration, so how many of these applicants have, experience in the public sector?
None.
None,
None. There
At
you
least
go.
not in the United States public sector.
not in the
And
United
how
States.
many, and how many agree on this board that the public sector is a hell of a lot different than the private sector, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, never.
that's something we have to, I think, be considerate of.
Right. It doesn't mean that people can't learn, but we don't have time for people to
Right.
learn right
We
now.
don't need on-the-job training, we need somebody with experience.
I also have a couple applicants from out of state,
Yes,
and that creates a whole other level of,
yeah. Complexity.
She's with
And-
OEC and all.
And we do, just to make sure everybody's aware, so we do tend to see that with almost any job we post, is that a lot of online applicants can do a search function of like, I wanna make between X and Y, and I'll drive within 1,000 miles. It'll feed all of them, and they can do one application for everything, so they can just click apply, and it just applies to all of them. And
Yeah,
you do,
I
and
mean-
you do see that, it's not.
I mean, it was interesting, there was not one cover letter to
Really?
these, not one cover letter.
Yeah,
On the
honestly,
each side, there was a cover letter, which was very nice, that said why they were interested in,
Yep.
and I'm sorry, that's the kind of thing I still expect.
It's not like that anymore when you hire them.
Yeah, I would say-
Like, no one does.
I was gonna
Like,
say,
it's sad, but
I've seen
it's a
less and less
different-
people even recommending cover letters, like you professors, they don't recommend those anymore, it's one
Right.
page and you're
I
shooting
guess
done.
I'm old.
Well, I will also say that of the administrator group, very few actually met the educational requirement, or even got close to meeting the educational requirement.
Well, for administrator, all you need, what do you need? All you need is a bachelor's, right?
No, we have masters in public health on, cause we went,
Oh.
It was preferred but not required.
Yes. Master's degree in public health or related field
Yeah.
and or advanced nursing preferred, okay? 5 years of experience in management. So some of these, I mean, I can tell you right now, they didn't even get close to public health or related field.
Right.
But the lack of experience in management is what I noticed with a lot of the positions, and which caught me off guard, because obviously this person needs to be a top-notch manager
Right.
to have success. And even if they met everything else, but didn't have that experience, I just don't think that's gonna be a successful candidate.
You have to be
unfortunately.
seasoned with HR and just dealing with
And,
personnel.
so before I forget or get in trouble, are we taking questions from the audience tonight? Somebody put their hand up.
Especially
I'm
if you don't
asking.
have to be, you guys can, that's why he's asking, you don't have to be confused.
We don't have to, but somebody put their hand up and,
I'm fine with taking public, I mean, I think we should just end the new business, whenever we're done with new business, I'm
It
fine.
wasn't a question, it was trying to,
Hold on. I think we
Wait.
would end our new business once we're finished with this discussion, and then I'm open to,
hearing somebody
hearing
from the
public
audience.
comments
Okay.
in the normal.
All right, so just hold on a sec.
yes.
Okay.
Dr. I added you to the EH director,
Thank you.
so you can see those resumes.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, are you familiar with Bamboo? Cause I certainly am not. Do you know how to get on and
I
everything?
can't, it didn't send me the
I've been
email,
able to
the login
get it.
instructions either.
You've been
It
able
was
to
sent
get
in
it?
email.
Except I couldn't
Yeah.
get it EH,
I
but
got
now.
the invite, but I never got any instructions or anything for login, and I tried with my email.
It'll ask you to set a password in that
Yeah.
email.
Just say you
I'll
forgot
show
the
you.
password, and then,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I did,
Right.
because I didn't get
Right.
setup instructions.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did that too.
Ashley, I'm just gonna send you I'm gonna request a password for you, so I'll
Okay.
send you an email to log in.
Okay, I'll do
Yeah.
that right away.
Okay,
Oh, well, the other thing I was gonna ask about is, so we're talking about this, about subbing out a portion of the health district, and my question is, does that need to be to another health district, or could that also be through a private company? Has that been something, so how if I was doing this for my company, what I would do is I would write an RFP, a request for proposals, I would say the services that I want, I would say what I wanna see in your proposal, and then I would ask for, people to reply to those proposals, you can have a presentation, and that, to me, could be a private company, or a public company, a government organization, as long as they can meet those requirements.
I would think, given our conversation about accreditation, and the fact that there needs to be an accreditation, I can't imagine a
I
private
see.
company having the accreditation requirement. Not that I don't think it's a great idea.
Why would the company need to have the accreditation requirement?
I think as long as
So-
the health department maintained accreditation, I don't think it would matter
Right.
who was doing the service.
That's what I would think.
So the health
I don't
department would
know.
have to.
That's just my speculation.
The health department would have to be accredited, I think I'd have to give more thought to it, 'cause I honestly just don't know.
Yeah.
But they would have to work with the rest of the health department on a lot of those topics, 'cause it's all intertwined. So you'd have to maintain all of that, and I don't know. We also tend to pay less than the private sector by significant numbers.
I mean, I'd like to see the proposals, and then we can make a
Yeah.
decision.
I'd like to dig and see if there's any companies out there who would contact
That's
us.
fair, that's fair
So
too.
I'm curious,
Yeah.
cause that would be nice if there were, to
Yeah.
explore that option.
And theoretically, if we were asking Lake to take over a portion of services, and we were not accredited, but they were,
Right.
does that, allow us to maintain the same
that,
benefits?
that is out
There
there.
could be co-accreditation, I'd have to ask that question.
They may put us on like, I'm thinking from a healthcare perspective, but there could be many ways they could deal with that, either putting us on their cycle or saying, you know, if you're still maintaining separate boards, separate things, there's several ways they could deal with it.
Yeah, that
but
seems
it's
like a question that
worth
needs to be
asking.
asked.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to run the ORC through my head of how, I just don't know, I'd have to ask,
Yeah, that's a good question.
yeah. There's both those questions are.
If there, it's my understanding, if we subcontracted the whole environmental health department out, for instance, that they would only, the state only requires one OE environmental health director.
I would,
Pretty sure we got
I would think
approved.
yes, cause so the FEP grant's usually what makes you have to have an EH director, a health commissioner, nursing director. Those are usually the triad, they call it. Because you sub out, because the FEP grant has been with Lake paired together, you don't tend to have to have those positions, which is why you get away with Lark kind of being in both.
Right, right.
Nursing director's a tough one to only have one of, because there's just, those are very unique situations that are like on site every day, that Carol deals with on a continual basis. But I would imagine there's gotta be some cost savings there, cause I know the state at one point, I think it was the state, I can't remember the call that happened, but they had said, like, you serve less than a population of less than 100,000, you should look at consolidating somewhere else. And then they said, okay, wait, 50,000 because 100,000 was too aggressive. But even the state saw that. It's years ago. That's probably when I first started. That's probably 8 years ago. There was a conversation about that because of the cost. Everyone knew accreditation was when accreditation is incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And let me just ask if I'm clear.
Mhm.
If, for instance, just hypothetically, if the Geauga Public Health District contracted out the entire environmental health services to Lake County, Lake County would be the employer of the employees who would be providing those services. Would that be correct?
That would depend on how you guys
It
structure
depends how we word the contract, but
If
that
you
would
did the entire
probably be
department,
the
that's
best.
If the entire department
Yeah.
was managed by Lake, then it's Lake's responsibility to hire employees, some of whom they might hire from the former, quote-unquote, former
Right.
Geauga Health District employees, and some of which would be used by their own existing employees.
Correct.
Right, they would have the hiring and termination, all responsibility.
Right.
And truthfully, if we did that with environmental, you know, the population health, you could do that the same way as well. But I think what you have to do is look at the overall picture. If you did if you did subcontract with a much larger county, like Lake County is, I think, like I said before, they have 100+ employees. We only have, I think, 23 employees. So just the sheer numbers gives us a little bit more, I think gives them more opportunity to help us. You know, don't you have a accreditation person? They have a population, educator, health educator. I mean, they have a lot more things than we do.
But there is a price, and the price is
Of course
not
there is
only,
Yes.
not only cost, but it also is giving up some local controlled autonomy.
So-
And that's,
So I'm not gonna speak on the contract with Lake. I would still go back to the last board meeting. The board needs to maintain control. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face that,
Right.
you know, whatever you guys decide how you wanna do things, the board should be the one that sets the policy for the county. And I say that because sometimes counties are as different as states. You know, Indiana might do one way, we do something different, and you can have Cuyahoga be so much different from Lake or different than Geauga that it's like a different country. I mean, it can be that different. I look at California, and Ohio, we're like two different countries, you know. So I would say that's something that, you know, everything else aside, the board still needs to make the policies for the county. No matter what you guys, with a private company, whatever you do, the board needs to be the one calling the shots.
I agree.
I still believe that every day.
I would also, just my opinion, if we're not able to fill the administrator role, it's gonna be very hard for us to hang on to EH and other things. We have to, so I'm not saying can't do and shouldn't do both, but it's very clear in my mind, if we cannot find a suitable administrator, that directs us down paths that we have to look at.
Okay, anything else?
No, it was a discussion I was hoping we would have, and I think.
Is that, are you happy with that discussion?
Yes.
Okay, very
I
good.
mean, I think it puts out there the
Provide some
concerns,
clarity.
gets some clarity.
And I guess just as a jumping point, if for some reason you guys wanna continue any of those conversations, we short of the private sector one, we probably have Rich talk or someone talk to Ron. It would not be me, just cause I really shouldn't be I should be outside of that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No matter what, I mean, if you say, hey, I mean, private sector, that's something easy that we can do. It's an interesting thought though. I'm trying to think, cause I haven't thought about it. It'd be, for how you write that RFP would be interesting.
Well, it'd be just like how we wrote the Parkman Well deal, right?
Yes.
75 pages and, you know.
On a 10 times or 200 times larger scale.
Right.
Respects.
The respects.
Okay, so I guess we can open it up for questions. Sir, do you have a question, comment?
I do not.
You
Ed,
don't?
nothing
You're
for us,
quiet.
buddy?
Okay, Mrs. Briggs, or Ms.
Yes.
Briggs.
Ms. Briggs, Geauga County. One, I don't know if the board is aware, but by statute, the reason you have levies on is to support the health district. But the townships and the incorporated areas, HDAC, must pay out of their budget to meet your budget. It's statute. So you never fall short. That's why they always support levies, townships. Geauga County is the first or second highest septic in the state. Don't we have fought sewer systems except when it was environmentally precious. And Lake County is mostly sewer. In the past, it was the health commissioner that wrote the budget. And the majority of the board decided to go with a contracted administrator and a part-time health commissioner. So that was one option that Ms. Rowan addressed.
But Mary, you know why we had to do that. We didn't have any qualified candidates last time either.
There's also two things to go in that. Is one, I've done the budget for 6 years. Before that, it was the fiscal coordinator, not the health commissioner. That's very well documented. The second thing being, the HDAC does need to, or the county, the funding falls back on them, but what it always comes back to every time is that, what do you have to do? And that was discussed in one of our HDACs probably 2 years ago. What does the health department have to do? It's a shell of what we do now. Cut everything back to that, which is a quarter of the budget. So keep that in mind, that statement is factually not, it doesn't match with what actually happens.
And instead of totally immediately going with Lake, to maybe continue that contract until a qualified person can be found for that department. I know
think
how
that was
my
one of the
heart
options.
is.
I mean, that is one of the options. The question is that we have to ask up here is how long do you wait for the right candidate?
Well, and any contract's gonna have a term, so the term is not to the end of time.
Exactly.
So, I mean, any
You always have
contract
an end
is
date
a
and-
temporary contract in
Yeah.
some way.
And some of that would come down to,
60 days next, where they could,
It's one
Well,
thing we
that-
agree on, Mary.
And that was Lake's, okay, that was their.
no, but it was in the contract, they did that option.
Okay, so, do you have any comments, sir?
Sir?
Okay, how about you that's running the cameras?
And
Okay.
behind the scenes first.
turn around, look at yourself, then make sure you're doing it.
So it's 5:53. Do we have a motion to go into executive session to discuss compensation of personnel, and then also like to invite our attorney into the executive session, Mr. Costura?
And there will be no action taken after. It's to my knowledge, unless somebody has something else.
So we have a motion?
I move to, go into executive session to discuss compensation of personnel.
Okay, do we have a second?
A second.
Ashley seconds. Okay, this is a roll call vote. Dr. Ruth,
Yes.
Mrs. Brady,
Yes.
Mrs. Roman,
Yes.
and Mrs. Jones. And Mr. Moreno, yes. Okay, we're in executive session. Thank you, everyone.
We're gonna go back out here around the corner.
Yeah.
To this side. They have my TV down in my room, so we can't use it.
Oh.
There's only like 2 seats left.
Gotcha.